Hey, welcome back. So just to recap, we just got done locating, naming, and describing the functions of certain muscles in your body. Now we are going to do a deep dive back into, I guess, some of the tissue chapter stuff, talking about the different types of muscles, specifically the skeletal muscles and how they work. We will talk a little bit about smooth and cardiac, but mostly we are focusing on the functions of skeletal muscle today. So let's dive on in. So, just to refresh our memories, we got three kinds of muscle tissues. We have skeletal muscle, which are voluntary, are attached to your bones, they're making your skeleton move, hence the name. We remember what that looks like. We got smooth muscle, which is involuntary. We do not have a choice in the matter, which thank God, because I really don't want to have to worry about having to make my digestive system work while I'm busy doing other things. That's where you're going to find this stuff. A lot of this is the digestive system. And cardiac, which again, thank goodness it is involuntary because I don't want to have to think about making my heart beat every single second of my entire existence. All right, let that do it on its own. Like I said in the beginning, we are going to focus mainly on the skeletal muscle tissue and how it works. So we zoom into this. We've seen this video before with the skeletal system, but now we are looking at the muscle itself, and we can see how the muscle connects up at the shoulder. We're looking at the bicep, by the way, reaches down and grabs the forearms. We can see that as it contracts, as it gets shorter, it also gets wider. And that's because you can see when we zoom in here that it is made up of a whole bunch of smaller things. And those smaller things are moving past each other, moving through each other. And they're going to have to push each other to the side, making the muscle wider. We're going to see more of that right now. So let's take a look at a more cartoony version of this and organize what is all going to look like. So to start off, we have this muscle itself. As you can see on the side, the word's going to start dropping down. We're going to organize them over here too. At the time of making this video, I did not set up your Google Doc notes yet. So I don't know if you're going to be filling that out, but you might have to. Anyway, taking a look here, we can see in the background we have a bone and it is attached by a tendon. We remember that tendons attach bones to muscles. They're kind of woven into each other. The muscle itself is made up of smaller ropes we call fascicles. This says fasciculus, that is singular. Multiple is fascicles. Since you have a lot of them, I tend to use the plural more often. Get used to that. But looking inside one fasciculus, again, we have a whole bunch of smaller fibers, and they are called muscle fibers. Guess what, guys? Those are the cells. That's what we looked at. That is what we studied way back in chapter 2 with the tissues. This is a skeletal muscle cell. And if you pull one of those out, you can see that this is that skeletal muscle cell with the nuclei on the surface. And what we did not see, what we did not look at, is that we can go one step further. Each muscle fiber is also made up of even smaller fibers called myofibrils or myofibrils. I have heard both pronunciations. And at this point, normally in a normal class setting, I would have you guys draw one of these being pulled out. That's kind of hard to do on a digital setting. I'm not sure how I'm setting that up, but let me show you what I'm talking about. So here's my handy dandy hand-drawn picture of what you were just looking at. And normally what I would have you guys do is take your marker, pen, pencil, whatever, this picture would be in your notes, and just take one of these circles and extend it outward. Pull it out. Right? This is your myofibril. But we are not done yet. That's right, guys. I know this is getting too much, but there is one more layer left. And no, it's not going to be a bunch of circles here. All right. This is actually where it gets different, guys. We are going to see where the functioning actually happens. Let's zoom in. Instead of a bunch of circles over here like we've been doing here and here, we are actually going to segment the myofibril. And inside that myofibril, we are going to have two different proteins that are working together. What color should I use? Let's go with purple and green. Make things stand out a bit, right? We are going to have these proteins in purple called myosin. Yes, that's important. I'm going to be asking you about this on the tests. Myosin. And then you have another, label that here. And in green is another protein called actin. And you see how myosin and actin are reaching out and touching each other. And you can see how myosin and actin are reaching out and touching each other. And what's going to happen is the myosin is going to grab the actin and they're going to pull on each other. And it's going to bring these sections in. By the way, these sections also have a name. That is a sarcomere. So that's 1 sarcomere, 2 sarcomeres, 3, 4, 5 sarcomeres that I drew. Sarcomere is made up of actin and myosin. And when they all pull on each other, the myosin pulls on the actin, they are going to come in closer like an accordion, and each one squeezes. And when that happens with all of the myofibrils, then this entire cell or muscle fiber, skeletal muscle cell, contracts. And when all of the muscle fibers are contracting because all of the sarcomeres are contracting, then the entire fascicle contracts. And when all of these fascicles contract, your muscle contracts. So it all is starting down here at the microscopic level. That's where it is all happening. So back to this side, if you're labeling, the muscles are made up of individual fascicles. The fascicles are made of individual muscle fibers. The muscle fibers are made of myofibrils. And then each myofibril is sectioned off as sarcomeres. And that is where the magic happens. Here's another version of it, zoomed in. I just wanted you to see it on the board as one whole solid picture. But again, this time red is the myosin and the blue is the actin. And you look closely, the myosin looks kind of zigzag. That's because it has these little structures that look like tentacles sticking up, and those tentacles are grabbing the actin, and that's what pulls. So when this pulls, it's pulling itself along the actin to center. And same thing here, same thing this way, same thing this way, and it contracts the entire myofibril. And the whole thing ends up moving like this. That's a contraction. This is a relaxation. Contract, relax. The myosin here, I did not animate the little tentacles, I apologize. The myosin grabs the actin and pulls it closer. And the same thing happens on this side, same thing happens on this side. So contract, relax, contract, relax. And then surrounding your muscle is a type of connective tissue called fascia. That is what is holding all of these fibers together. And there is a muscle degenerative disorder that results in that fascia breaking down, unfortunately. It's a genetic disorder. People are born with it. And as a result, as they get older, their muscles start unraveling and they can't support their own body anymore. And as far as I know, there's no real treatment for it. Moving on, to remind you what I said earlier, skeletal muscle fibers, these muscle fibers are the cells, right? So that means the fascicles, or in this case, fasciculus, singular, is skeletal muscle tissue that we looked at in chapter 2, right? So each individual fiber is one individual skeletal muscle cell. Again, we looked at in chapter 2, tissues. But now we want to go deeper and look at the myofibrils on the inside. And that is what causes the contraction of what is inside these cells. Moving on from what they do to how they do it, you're looking at right here, one fasciculus. Right? That means these are a bunch of individual muscle fibers. In a future chapter, we are going to talk about your nervous system and how your nerves extend from your brain down your spinal cord, branch out across your body, and then grab onto all of your muscles to tell your muscles what to do. That is what we're looking at, that last part. This is part of your nervous system. This is the tail end of a neuron Remember nerve tissue? This is the tail end of that neuron reaching out and interacting with a bunch of different muscle fibers, muscle cells. And that is what we call the neuromuscular junction, right? Neuro, meaning your nervous system. This is a neuron, neuro. Muscular, it is interacting with a muscle, neuromuscular. And junction is a location where two things meet. So this is where a neuron and a muscle join. And we're going to call this a motor neuron. That's going to be more important in a future chapter. We also have sensory neurons. Sensory neurons go to your brain to tell you what's going on. Motor neurons come from the brain to tell your muscles what to do. This motor neuron, nerve cell that connects directly from the spinal cord to the muscle. This motor neuron, a nerve cell that connects directly to the spinal cord, from the spinal cord to the muscle, forms what we call the motor unit. The neuron and the muscle working together is the motor unit. At this point, guys, you are probably very confused. That's because everyone gets confused by this. So let me point it out very slowly for you. Neuron and muscle working together is the motor unit. Neuromuscular junction is specifically right where these things meet. This exact location, look at my mouse, see the mouse moving right there? This exact location where this piece of neuron interacting with this piece of the muscle. That's one neuromuscular junction, that's another neuromuscular junction, another neuromuscular junction. You get the idea, so on, so forth, so forth, so forth. The entire thing is the motor unit. We are going to depend on what we call an impulse. An electric current travels through your nervous system. We would also know it as an action potential. This electric current travels through your nervous system down the motor neuron and interacts at the neuromuscular junction. That electric impulse is going to be used to tell the muscles to contract. Again, look at all three of these pictures happening, right? Looking at this person here, it leaves the brain down the spinal cord, branches out to the bicep. This time the middle picture comes down to the muscle and tells the muscle to contract. You see that the muscle got shorter but wider as it contracted, and that's what pulled on the bones. What's happening is down here, that electric signal travels, branches out to all the neuromuscular junctions, and they tell all of the muscle fibers to start contracting. But the impulse itself doesn't make the muscles move. No, there's actually a whole series of things after that that we are going to gloss over because that's nervous system stuff that we're not ready for. But the end result is that nerve impulse is eventually telling you to use your own ATP. Remember that, guys? ATP from Bio 1, Cellular Respiration and Photosynthesis chapter? ATP, the energy molecule, your energy molecule. This is what your body makes from the food you eat in order to energize your body. And we're going to use it to provide energy for your muscles. But remember, one glucose molecule actually was used to charge about 38 ATP. And you eat way more than one glucose molecule, guys. So you have way more ATP than I could actually draw here, but there's a lot. And the more you use your muscles, the more ATP you are going to burn through, right? Here's that nerve impulse again. And you start using your ATP to maintain muscle usage. And the more you use it, the more ATP you start burning through. Look at that. You are depleting. You are running out. And then eventually, you just get too tired, right? Is that what happens? You get too tired? Actually, you get something called fatigue. We'll talk about that in a second. So how all this works, just to refresh your memory, guys, this is going to be important. Bio 1 stuff comes back to haunt you in anatomy. Oh no. Cellular respiration. Remember this. Glucose, carbon and water, carbohydrate, glucose. And we have a whole bunch of ADP, 2-phosphates. Those are dead batteries. And we have 6 oxygen molecules. Remember that, 6 carbons, 6 oxygen molecules, 6 O2 molecules. We're gonna use 6 of these then to rip off 6 of these. Boom, all the energy comes out and we charge up all the ATP. Again, it would have been 48. I got lazy on the art, but boom, energy, and then we use all that energy, right? But what happens if you are using your energy faster than you can keep up with, right? Remember that oxygen. No. What happens though if you are using your energy faster than you can breathe this oxygen in, right? You are running out of ATP faster than you can breathe all this oxygen. You don't have enough oxygen to open up all of your glucose to charge your ATP fast enough. Well, you run out of ATP, right? That's bad. What happens is something called fatigue. And I'm sure you all know what fatigue is, right? What's fatigue? Fatigue's like when you're tired, right? No, fatigue does not actually mean tired. If you're tired, we already have a word for that. It's tired, right? We would just say that. But no, fatigue is something else then. Fatigue is when you do not physically have the ability to use your muscles anymore because of chemistry, right? Your muscle fibers cannot contract. When you do not have enough oxygen, your body has a backup plan. Lactic acid fermentation. You guys remember that from Bio 1? Lactic acid fermentation. Look over here. This is your mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell, right? And that is where you're making a whole bunch of ATP, but this requires oxygen. If you do not have enough oxygen, you have a backup plan. You're going to take that glucose and you're going to come outside the mitochondria and ferment. You're going to break it open on your own, and in the process, you are going to accidentally create lactic acid. And here's the thing about acid, ladies and gentlemen. Acid lowers the pH of your muscles. What does that mean? It means it's now in a very acidic environment, and these electric impulses do not transmit very well in a low pH environment, in an acidic environment. So check out here. Your muscles like a good neutral environment, watery. If it gets acidic, then the electric impulses don't travel very well. They're not going to travel through your nerves to reach your muscles. So it's not that your muscles are too tired, it's that they don't get the message in the first place. Your brain is yelling, contract, and the muscles are like, what? Did you guys hear something? No? Yeah, me either. That's fatigue. Moving on. Another thing that happens, and this is again, Bio 1 stuff, guys. Whenever you're using your mitochondria, yes, we're going back to using your mitochondria again. Every time you use your mitochondria and you break open the glucose and you get energy out, only some of that energy goes to ATP. A lot of it gets lost. That's right. You break open the glucose, you make 38 ATP with some of the energy, but most of that energy just becomes heat. And yeah, that heat heats up your body. It's good. We like that. We're warm-blooded. And then it radiates off your body and goes into the atmosphere. It's gone. So skeletal contractions, using your muscles, so therefore using your mitochondria, is going to create heat. If you're outside and it's getting too cold, do some jumping jacks and you'll warm yourself right up. All right, that was all about your skeletal muscles. Let's switch gears. I'm going to spend a lot less time on this one because this chapter is mostly about skeletal muscles. Smooth muscles. And we got 2 different kinds of smooth muscles. Yes, guys, I know. I only told you before that you had 3 types, right? Skeletal, smooth, and cardiac. Well, now we're getting smarter. Smooth muscles can be broken down into 2 categories. Multi-unit smooth muscles and single-unit smooth muscles. So let's look at multi-unit first. These fibers are separate and not organized. And yes, you will have to recognize these pictures on the test. Multi-unit means you have multiple neuromuscular junctions, right? Here's one nerve hitting one smooth muscle fiber, one nerve with another muscle fiber, another nerve, another muscle fiber. Each muscle fiber gets its own nerve. So they are all individual things. You have multiple units. Or single unit, you can see here they're all working together. Multiple fibers functioning as one single unit. We'll get to that in a second. But this multi-unit can be found in various places, like the iris of your eye. That's right, guys. The color part of your eye is actually a whole bunch of individual smooth muscles. So they contract this way, and then they relax, and they contract, and they relax, and they contract. So the black part, the pupil of your eye, is actually a hole in the center. It's not actually a thing. And as your smooth muscles here in the iris contract, it's going to make this hole bigger. And because they're all contracting in different directions, they're all going to be their own individual smooth muscle. And now single unit smooth muscles, these fibers are organized in sheets, meaning these bunch of fibers are all connected to each other and they are sharing one neuromuscular junction. This one neuron is telling all of these muscle fibers what to do. So they all count as one single unit. And this is another single unit. Same thing here, same thing here. So one stimulus is going to affect all of these cells. And this is going to be found in most of your internal organs, mostly your digestive system, where one impulse is going to cause a whole series of squeezing. And that series of squeezing is what's going to make your food move through your digestive system until eventually it's no longer food, and that squeezing is what makes you go to the bathroom, which we're going to pause it right there and not finish that video. And of course, cardiac muscle tissue, which I pretty much told you everything you need to know about that, right? It is found in the heart. They are separated by these intercalated discs that make that muscle impulse move faster and more efficiently. So, which is written right here, I forgot about. The discs transmit impulses easier. Less impulse to contract more cells so that your heart doesn't have to work as hard. This helps your heart use less energy. All right, guys, one more thing before I close up shop, and that is origin versus insertion. This is going back out, zooming back out, guys, and looking at your muscle as a whole, not at the cellular level anymore. The origin and the insertion are the two ends of your skeletal muscles, where a muscle connects to the bones. The origin is going to be connecting to the bones that do not move. Yes, there are bones that don't move. Look at this bicep right here. And as it reaches up, it is grabbing the shoulder. So if you look at me, guys, when I use my bicep right here, my forearm's going up and down, right? The muscle contracts and brings the forearm up, but look, my shoulder doesn't move at all, even though this bicep connects there. So this is the non-moving bones. This is the origin. Down here, it's grabbing onto the bones that are moving. This is the insertion. So same thing over here with your gastrocnemius muscle. Your femur is going to be the origin, and then it reaches down and grabs the heel. That's the insertion. Just like I was doing with the bicep. When the muscle contracts, the insertion is the side that moves. Same thing over here, looking down at the heel. The insertion moves the heel, not the femur. And I forgot about this, so this is the last one, I promise. These muscles are going to function in groups. So in these groups, we call them the prime mover and the antagonist. The prime mover is the one actually responsible for the movement, and the antagonist is going to resist the movement. What does that mean? That means as this muscle, this bicep, pulls on the forearm bones, the radius and the ulna, that forearm lifts up, and then down, you see this right here? This is the tricep. The tricep is relaxed because it doesn't want the bones to move up. And when this muscle contracts, it's going to pull the bones down. So this tricep is the antagonist to this motion. Specifically, that movement, guys. So when I'm doing this motion specifically, not this one, no, up. The bicep is the prime mover, and the tricep is the antagonist. When I go back down, roles reversed. Now going back down, the tricep is the prime mover, and the bicep's the antagonist. So it's based on what movement you're doing at that time. And that is it for today's notes, ladies and gents. Don't forget to go back on Google Classroom and see if I left you any work to do, and I will see you in class.